Hey guys, in honor of the new 992 Porsche dropping, soon, I thought I'd do a review of this guy, which I think is the best kind of value Porsche and the end of an era in Porsches. I'll explain in the video. So let's get started right away on why I think that and what I think of this car, having owned it for just about 2 years now and putting about 20,000 miles on it. Now, when I got this car, it was probably the best value out there. It's still, I think, the best supercar. Although if you're not big and you want a super sedan, the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio, I've reviewed that. I had it on the track. That's a better car overall. It's newer. They still have warranty if you get them, and it's about the same price as these guys now. But I don't think you can call that a supercar because everyone calls it a super sedan because it's a sedan. So I still stand by the fact that this is the best supercar, in its value right now. You can get some Gen 1 Gallardos for kind of similar money. It's going to be more. You can get some older Ferraris for similar money, but they're not going to, perform like newer supercars, and the maintenance is going to be absolutely crazy on that. I'll tell you all the maintenance, I've done in 2 years and 20,000 miles of owning this car later on. Still have some of the rally stickers on it. Thought I'd talk about the style first. I'll talk about some of the mods, my cost of ownership, and then of course give it a drive and kind of let you know how I think it drives compared to other, even like modern supercars and things like that. So sorry for the rally stickers still on there, but yeah, so this car was originally dark green, which I think looked very elegant and whatnot. I'll show it to you now kind of here, and I'll probably overlay a picture of it before the wrap. Definitely people, the blue color, because that's a newer trend, makes the car, I feel like, look newer. Some people love the more dark green. Love the style. Obviously this came after the ones with the headlights that came out there. This is a very traditional 911, and I'll show you in the drive review. These look like little gun barrels from the driver's seat there, so kind of like when you point the car, it's kind of nice. Here's a 996, actually, our neighbor's car. No real LEDs here, nothing too much to talk about up front here. I'll talk about the engine a little bit when we look at that. Just a good looking car. There's not a whole lot to talk about. One mod I did, the last owner added this on. This car has a ton of carbon, like from the factory. The old owner added this, and then I replaced these. Yeah, I mean, it's a very clean looking car. I think it's aged well. Looks are, of course, subjective. So let's check out that engine, and we'll talk about the interior and mods. Sorry, it's a little dirty, like I said. Just got back from a rally not too long ago. So here is that, if you're a Porsche fan, you'll know it's the Metzger engine. This is the last generation of that engine. Not too much to look at, but much better than new 911s, where all you see when you lift this up are some fans. So what Metzger means, if you're not a Porsche fan, is he was a race car engine designer, and this was essentially a very similar engine to one that was actually in some of the Porsche racing cars. You can still see that original color under there. And then one thing you'll notice is this fan, if you've been on a long kind of spirited drive, will run like 20-30 minutes after in the garage. When I was trying to do a top speed run, so much aero, this top shook a little bit, and this guy actually came off it. We'll talk about more of that in the drive review. Let me grab the exhaust while we're back here, because it's one of two mods I think every owner kind of should make to this car. So yeah, before I go through the interior and, kind of do the review on that, let me talk about the two mods I think this car needs. The first one is definitely an exhaust. It's kind of like a GTR in that the turbo steals a lot of sound from the exhaust, the turbos. So that's one. I use the Tubi style exhaust. It's got some lower cats, 200 cats on there, and it doesn't drone or anything like that. Inside the car, it's actually a little quiet, but everyone else tells me outside the car, especially at wide open throttle, that it sounds quite loud and quite good. So whenever I have someone driving behind me or whatever, people seem to like it. I wish it was a little louder, but again, it's definitely not shouty. This is the other one. I have the Cobb access port tuner. You can pick these up from Cobb, and they might have some used online. Stage 1 I did before the exhaust. It definitely made the car feel more alive. And so yeah, there's stage 1, stage 2. I wouldn't recommend stage 3 on this car because based on the value of this car, doing a stage 3, it's like, is it really worth the money? Probably not. Going to stage 2, however, definitely makes a difference. Definitely gives you more of that kickback in your seat when the turbos hit. It ups the boost levels quite a bit. Even on stage 1, there's an overboost feature on this car with the Sport Chrono. And even when you're not in the overboost, that's kind of the default. And then when you hit the Sport button, it overboosts it even more. So you're always getting that overboost to like at least 500 torque. Even just with stage 1, so that's pretty cool. Let's go through the interior, talk about things like that. Interior's definitely nice on this car, much better than 996. There's this little pocket. All this is covered in leather. I believe this leather's an option on here. This car is one sticker for about $160 new. It has all the carbon fiber. I love the 4 gauges. I don't like how they did this color to match the interior, but it's something they optioned on there. We'll talk about this in the drive review. Not a huge fan of these. I much prefer paddles for shifting, but this transmission's not the fastest anyway, so that is kind of that. You can get these covered in leather. This one did have the leather dash up here, which I don't believe they all do. And then of course more carbon here. These are pretty clever. I don't even really talk about them because even like Boxsters and stuff have them, but it's a very efficient way to have 2 fairly large cup holders there. So I think that was a clever invention. They actually did away with this in the 992 and put the cup holder like here, which I think not a huge fan of. This, you may notice, is more of a 997.2. This trim piece came off. I have both pieces. I would just need to reattach it. Little things like that, but it's a 10-year-old car, so that's kind of to be expected. About this Bose stereo. I don't talk about stereos a lot. I believe it's 3 speakers here, 2 in each door, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's like a 12 speaker system total. What makes this different than other Bose systems though, which are kind of boomy and echoey, is it's a good surround sound system. Great though is this gives it more of a surround effect, putting it back a few. Is the surround sounds really good on it, but there's something called linear mode, and it activates neutral sound adaptation recommended for serious audiophiles versus, I guess, casual audiophiles. Basically what it does is that boominess and not having a lot of high end that Bose systems are known for, it sort of takes that away, and it really does sound a lot more, for lack of a better word. So that makes this, it's up there with like some of the Harman Kardon systems. The high end is still what's missing. The bass is really good. The mids are usually good on Bose systems. That's not something they're critiqued for. The highs are just not totally there, but it's one of the better Bose systems out there. The surround sound's actually pretty good as well. So I do recommend it, and the subwoofer is quite nice. It's actually, they packaged the subwoofer down here, and they even put some carpet on it, and that venting, one of those is for heat, and then I believe the other one though is for air to come out of the subwoofer. So that's really, really cool. And then this is where you'd plug in a radar detector. Of course, there's also a plug right there. So there are 2. This is for the convertible top. So depending which model you were looking at, it might not have that. There is no way to shift here, as we'll talk about in the drive review, but except for these. But this transmission is not the fastest, so you might not want to manually shift anyway. This screen here is believe it or not, the updated screen. It's still pretty basic, but then you can get the cooled seats on this one. You do get the newer MMI because it's a 2009. So if you're wondering why this is a .1 or a first gen with this, it's because it's the last year they made this in just the turbo. Steering wheel is very nice. The carbon really helps, make it look more sporty and nice. I think this interior films, it's a little dirty, better than it is. Again, the owner, the original owner, because this was a CPO car when I got it, so I'm the 3rd owner, went crazy with the carbon fiber here. They also got the Porsche logo in the headrest. That's an option I like. And they also went the Porsche logo here. Some say turbo there. Nice little storage console, good space, and then very old, much older iPod interface here. Little coin holder, little storage space. A fair amount of storage. This goes pretty deep down in here. A pretty big glove box as well, very spacious. It kind of dates the car that there's a CD holder. You can put a nice Porsche pen in there. And then the back seats, I'll be honest, they're small, very small adults or children are best suited back there. I had this down from the rally because you can put some like luggage up here. You can store some things under there. This is optional. You won't see this if it's not the convertible because it flips up. And that's about it on the interior. Pretty basic. Having the starter over here was for when people started racing from outside the car, so you could put the key in and start the car before you ever even got in, which is kind of cool. I think it's the leather makes it nice and all the carbon makes it nice. Definitely not, I like the 991 interiors a lot better than this one. But this one's a lot more affordable and better to drive, especially the way they did the console down here. And the PDK. But we'll talk about that more in the drive review, which will start now. Before I do that, though, there have been about 1 million reviews of this car already. When it was new, it was even on Top Gear as one of the few Porsches that Jeremy Clarkson liked and said, hey, this car, you know, is as good or may even be better than my Ferrari he had at the time. So tons of new reviews, a few used ones. Owning this car 2 years, it's been as reliable as everyone says they are. A few little wear items. I had the spark plugs redone. It didn't actually have any misfires or anything. That was just more with the tune. I wanted the best performance possible. They're about every 30,000 miles on this car, being a high performance car. That's the change interval. Another thing I had done, the CV boots in front were leaking. It's kind of like suspension bushings. It's a part that kind of goes bad over time. You may have to do that, you may not. Everything I've had with this car, though, has been more or less wear related. The actual mechanicals, even though I had a warranty, didn't use it once. All the mechanicals are strong. The transmission is $20,000, and I'm not even that big a fan of it, but I had a friend who had to order one new. They may have come down since then. You can probably get a used one, but that's why I wanted a basic mechanical warranty to cover like the engine, the powertrain, transmission, especially in this guy, just because that's expensive. So let's get it out on the road. Let's start it up. There's a bit of a cold-ish start. See how quiet it is? I'm going to rev it inside. See, you can, I mean, maybe it comes across better on video, but it is super duper quiet, and this is a really well insulated double top here. I'm gonna leave the top up today. It's like 40 degrees out. It's the middle of winter, but yeah. So I only got the convertible because it was it was priced similarly to some 7 and 8 cars, even though it was an 09, and it was just kind of the cheapest one with like a clean Carfax and low miles and stuff like that that I could find. The convertibles aren't normally that much cheaper. They're more rare though, for sure. If I had to do it all over again, I'd probably find an 07 because I save a little bit of money. This was pretty close at the time, but I know now there just aren't a lot of the 09s out there because the economy I don't think was great then, and it was, you know, this one was $160,000. I think it was $120 before, and then had $40,000 in options, which just blows my mind. That's practically what the car is worth now, just the options. I mean, they're probably still, depending when you're watching this, they're in the low 50s. This one would be around 55, 60,000, depending how many miles. Speaking of miles, I have 72,000 miles almost on this car. I got it at 52,000 originally, and it still honestly drives like brand new. These cars hold up incredibly well. I've had to put new tires on, and like I said, I don't mention wear items like that. I haven't had to do brakes. They're about $1,000 if you have to do the rotors and the pads on either one. If you have to replace the suspension bushings, they replace the whole suspension on this car, so that's about $1,000 to $2,000. Those are just costs to kind of keep in mind if you get a higher mileage example. So I'm just going to take it on this little like test track here. The suspension is what I'll talk about first. This was the first generation, I believe, of the Porsche Active suspension management. And so I say that because there's two modes. There's the standard mode, which is what I leave it in even when I'm driving the car aggressively. And then there's a mode that honestly could only be imagined on the track. It is so rough. It like jiggles your bones. And honestly, I think it compromises the handling of the car because it's almost just too stiff. There's no give. If you've ever driven one of these, you'll kind of know what I talk about. So I just put it in sport mode for tighter steering. It gives it a more rear balance, I believe, on the all-wheel drive. Better throttle response, all that good stuff. But then I turn the suspension back in regular. It's still very flat through corners, very aggressive. And and then only if I'm on a smooth road or track would I ever even use that. There are like updates, I guess, for it that update the software, and there's an updated suspension. Ask me down in the comments if you have questions about that. Coming around turns, the steering on this car is the biggest thing. The 991s are all electric steering. Sorry about the sun. It's a good electric system, and I guess on the 992, from what I've heard in the few first reviews I've seen from like Chris Harris, the 992 finally got that electric steering about as good as it's going to get. If you're looking at a 991 though, this steering is going to be, the 997 steering is going to be much better, being a mechanical system. You feel literally, I wish I could show you the steering here, but the camera just won't work at that angle. But you can see the wheel moving with like gradients in the road. On a long trip, yeah, that could kind of get exhausting, but this is a sports car, supercar, call it what you like. Most people call this the everyday supercar. So I'm actually going to do some spirited turns here and kind of give you more of the feel of the car. Like I said, the steering is one of the most communicative systems, even better than the old mechanical BMW systems. It is, I would say, one of the top steerings I've ever experienced, right up there with Ferrari. Like, it's a very good steering. On turns, it does feel rear heavy still. The .2, one of the Generation 2 one of these, and of course 991s are almost like a mid-engine car, like a Cayman, based on the weight distributions. This one's not. You can get active engine mounts on there to kind of help, or not active, but stiffer ones. The .2s did have active mounts as an option. On this one, you can replace the engine mounts. If you're buying a higher mileage one, I'd recommend that because it does shift the weight more predictably, whereas here, it's neutral, and then it just, even with the all-wheel drive and even with stability control, it'll just pull out. I love the sport mode on this stability control though, because it will let you get a little bit slidey where you don't have to turn it all the way off and be unsafe. Brakes are incredible. They're up there with the brakes of modern supercars. I wouldn't get the carbon ceramic ones. I wouldn't have turned it down if the car I was looking at had it, but when you have to replace those, you don't have to replace them as often, but everyone knows they are very expensive. The whole brakes around this car to replace the steel ones is about $2,000. You're not gonna have to do both at the same time, most likely, as well. Show you. Wow, that speed was very fast. Once those turbos hit, there's no turbo lag. The car feels quick, and then the turbos hit, and then it just, I mean, it feels, the closest thing I could describe the turbo feel to is almost like the ones on a McLaren, where you know it's a fast car, but then when those turbos hit, it really just gives you a totally different experience. The transmission is really the weak point in this car. The Tiptronic, part of why I bought that was they're easier to come by. I knew I was going to tune it, and this is actually an AMG source transmission, so it holds the higher power really well. That's why they didn't move the turbo to the PDK earlier, even though they moved other 911s to that, because this transmission just handled the torque better. Ride quality, it's not great. The 997.2, you lose this Metzger engine. You do get PDK though, and you do get a better Porsche active suspension management. I would say the .2 is probably as good of a car overall, and it's still really capable to tune. I believe Cobb has a tune for those as well, and you get the better transmission. So if you're not thinking of modding it, I would probably see if a .2 is in your price point. The engine, it's debatable. The power numbers are the same. But if you're willing to save a little money, the .1 is truly a special car, especially for Porsche enthusiasts with that Metzger engine, things like that. So those are kind of my final thoughts on this car. Would I buy it with my own money? I did. I've had it for 2 years now. And I've greatly enjoyed it. 20,000 miles. I've driven it from Florida, where I got it, back to Texas. I drove it out to California for a rally, and then back to Texas again. I've just absolutely loved the car. I've actually been back to Florida for a rally as well. So the car's literally been across the country almost twice, and it's had no problem. So let me know any questions you guys have down in the comments on this car. Until next time, my speedy racers, drive on.